Have you ever come across a book that just feels like it's holding secrets, like it's whispering something from a really, really long time ago?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
That's exactly how I feel about this book, the Shan Hai Jing, the classic of mountains and seas.
Oh, wow. The Shan Hai Jing. Now that's a fascinating one.
Yeah. It's been called a book of wonders, and I can totally see why. It's full of these crazy creatures and landscapes that seem completely impossible. It really captures your imagination.
It really does. And you know what? Our listeners brought us to this topic. They shared some incredible sources with us, and we're diving deep into the Shan Hai Jing to try and understand it better.
It's great to have the listeners guide us like this. And what's so cool about this book is that it's not just about one thing.
It covers so much.
I know, right? Geography, mythology, all these animals, some real, some totally bizarre, and then there's medicine, religious stuff, even how people back then saw the world.
It's almost like an encyclopedia of ancient China.
Exactly. An encyclopedia of the weird and wonderful. But that leads to some pretty big questions.
It really does.
Like, was this book meant to be some kind of guide? Or was it more like a collection of myths and legends, maybe with a tiny bit of real-world observation mixed in?
Hmm. That's a good question. And of course, there's the question of who wrote it and when.
And here's what really blows my mind. Is this just about ancient China?
Yeah.
Or could it be hinting at something much, much bigger, a wider world even?
These are the mysteries that have fascinated scholars for centuries, and they're exactly what we're going to tackle in this deep dive today.
Okay, so first things first, what is this book really about? Is it fact, fiction, or something in between?
Seems like those early Chinese scholars just took it as the absolute truth.
They did, didn't they? They treated it like a straight-up record of animal bestiary, as they called it. It's like they thought nine-headed snakes were just casually strolling around back then.
That's how it seems. But the fascinating thing is how that perception has evolved over time. While those early scholars just accepted what they read, modern scholarship offers a more nuanced view.
So what do modern scholars think?
Well, there are three main camps, so to speak. The first, and this is often associated with the work of Yuan Ke, sees the Shan Hai Jing primarily as a foundational text for understanding ancient Chinese mythology.
So it's like a window into the beliefs and stories of ancient China.
Precisely. Then you have what's called the novel theory, which is really interesting. Li Jiangguo and other scholars point out that some historical collections actually classified the Shan Hai Jing as a novel.
A novel. Wow. That makes you think about its storytelling aspects. If it was seen as a novel, did people really take those geographical and zoological descriptions seriously?
That's the heart of the novel theory, right?
Yeah.
It highlights the imaginative and narrative elements. But the most common view among scholars today is what's called the geography book theory. This is the idea that at its core, despite all those fantastical creatures, the Shan Hai Jing is fundamentally about geography.
That makes sense, considering how much detail it goes into about mountains and rivers.
Right. It reads like a strange kind of map at times.
But it's not like its reputation has always been squeaky clean, has it?
It has a complicated history, for sure. If we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the way the Shan Hai Jing has been seen has shifted a lot over time. From the Han Dynasty up to the Tang Dynasty, people generally believed it was an accurate account of the world. They thought those mountains, rivers, and yes, even the weird creatures were all real.
It was like their National Geographic, huh?
Yeah, something like that. But then, as we move into the Ming and Qing dynasties, things start to change. People's knowledge of the world expanded, and fictional storytelling became more popular. And as that happened, the Shan Hai Jing's credibility took a hit. People started to think of it as more of a work of imagination. The novel theory gained more traction during this period.
So it went from being this ancient atlas to more of a fantasy novel.
Exactly. But then, in the late Qing dynasty and into the 20th and 21st centuries, we see yet another shift. With new academic fields like anthropology and folklore emerging, researchers started to look at the Shan Hai Jing in a whole new light.
So what did they see?
They started to recognize its value as a synthesis of different areas of knowledge. They saw it as a crucial source for understanding ancient Chinese culture, beliefs, and even early scientific observations.
So it became a multi-purpose tool for research.
Exactly. Which brings us to today, where it's used in a wide range of fields. It's amazing how its role has transformed over time.
It's like the book itself has gone on its own journey. Okay, so we've talked about what the book might be, but who wrote it? That seems like an even bigger mystery.
You're telling me. This question of authorship has been a hot topic for over 2,000 years, ever since Sima Khan first mentioned the Shan Hai Jing in his records of the Grand Historian. The earliest attribution we have comes from Lu Zhu in the Western Han Dynasty. He believed it was written by Yu the Great.
Yu the Great, as in the legendary founder of the Xia dynasty, the one known for taming the floods.
That's the one. And his assistant, Boi. This theory linked the book to a super early period in Chinese history, almost a mythical time.
It sounds pretty convincing. What made people start to doubt it?
Well, the biggest issue has to do with the development of writing itself. We know from archaeological evidence that a fully developed writing system didn't really appear until the Shan dynasty, which came after the Xia dynasty.
So, attributing this complex book to the Xia dynasty, when writing wasn't really a thing yet, became problematic.
Exactly, it just didn't add up. Later scholars like Chen Zhensen, Zhu Xi, and Hu Yinglan, they recognized that the book was super old, but they had their doubts about Yu the Great being the author. Some even thought maybe his descendants wrote it based on some ancient map.
So, if not Yu the Great, then who? What other theories are out there?
There are quite a few. For example, Zhu Xi and Hu Yinglan both suggested that maybe it was written by some curious man living during the Warring States period. Then, in the Qing dynasty, Biao Yuan came up with the idea that it had multiple authors.
Makes sense to me.
It does, doesn't it? He proposed that the Mountains classic was by Yuan Boi, the Overseas and Inside Seas classic were written by folks from the Qin dynasty, and the Great Farmland classic got its final form during Lu Shi's reign.
So, a collaborative effort spanning centuries. What about more recent theories, like from the 20th century onwards?
Well, in the 20th century, we start to see more specific names being thrown around. Liu Shipei, for example, noticed that the Shan Hai Jing was mentioned in the ancient text Mozi. Based on that, he suggested that Zhu Yan might be the author.
And who was Zhu Yan?
He was a philosopher from the Warring States period, known for his theories about geography. Another scholar, Wei Juxian, thought Sui Kaozi, a follower of Mozi, might be the author, based on the writing style and linguistic features that were thought to be typical of the Chu region back then.
Okay, so lots of different names, lots of different theories. But if I'm hearing you right, the prevailing view today is that it wasn't just one person who wrote this book.
Right. That's right. Most scholars agree that it was likely compiled over a long time by many different people. This leads to a debate that's often called shuvo, Fan's shu. This debate is all about where the primary authors came from. Were they from the north, perhaps from the Qin or Central Plains regions, or were they from the south, maybe the Chu or Bashu regions?
So a geographical debate about the authorship of a book that's all about geography.
Haha, exactly. It's kind of perfect, isn't it? There's also the Zhezhung, which is more a compromise view. This suggests that the Shan Hai Jing is a collection of local knowledge about geography and culture, gathered from different people in different places and times.
A patchwork quilt of ancient knowledge.
I like that. And of course, when scholars think the book was written, ties in directly with who they think the authors were. Most estimates range from the Warring States period to the early Han Dynasty. But some scholars still argue for earlier origins, like the Xia or Shang dynasties. The dating depends on who you think was doing the writing.
It's like a big puzzle where the pieces are constantly shifting. But let's get back to the content itself. We've talked about the sheer number of mountains and rivers it describes. So, is there any truth to be found within all those tales of fantastical creatures and faraway lands?
That's the truly captivating part. Because amidst all the imagination, there are hints of genuine observation. Remember, the book describes over 550 mountains and 300 rivers. That suggests some real geographical knowledge was woven into those stories. And even some of the creatures that seem completely mythical might actually be based on real animals.
Oh, like how people think the Sheng Sheng might actually be an orangutan.
Exactly. The description, shaped like a monkey with white ears, moves crouching and walking, eats, and is good at walking, fits orangutans surprisingly well.
It does, doesn't it?
And then there's the home, Kitu, which is described as like a chicken with 3 heads, 6 eyes, 6 feet, and 3 wings. That sounds pretty wild, right?
Totally well.
But some people think it might be an exaggerated description of the kookaburra, an Australian bird. Imagine someone seeing this bird with its colorful plumage and unique feather arrangements. They might have interpreted that as multiple heads and wings.
It's like they were trying to make sense of something unfamiliar by using the language and imagery they knew.
Exactly. It's a fascinating window into how people observed and interpreted the natural world.
Absolutely. Okay, so maybe some of these creatures have real-world counterparts. But what about those descriptions of multiple suns? How do we make sense of that?
Now, this is where things get really interesting. The Great Wilderness Classic, which is a part of the Shan Hai Jing, talks about 7 sun-rising mountains and 7 sun-setting mountains.
10 suns! That's a lot of suns.
I know, right? But this seemingly bizarre idea could actually be connected to something real. The ancient practice of dividing the year and tracking the seasons based on the sun's movements. Ancient people carefully observed how the sun rose and set at different points on the horizon throughout the year, marking the changing seasons.
So maybe those 7 sun-rising mountains and 7 sun-setting mountains represent those different points on the horizon.
That's one interpretation, and it's a pretty compelling one. And there's another interesting detail. The text mentions the phrase Kichiktu X, which translates to, within the Great Wilderness, there is a mountain named XX 28 times.
28 times. Okay, there's got to be something to that.
And there is. Those 28 mountains correspond to the 28 constellations of the traditional Chinese zodiac.
Whoa, the constellations. So those mountains aren't just random, they're tied to the stars.
That's right. It suggests a deep connection between the geography of the Shan Hai Jing and ancient astronomical observations.
That's a huge aha moment. It really makes you think about what else we might be misinterpreting.
Exactly. What other seemingly strange parts of the book might actually be grounded in real-world knowledge or observation?
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. This brings us to another question. Could the Shan Hai Jing actually be describing places beyond the borders of ancient China?
This is where we delve into the world map theory.
Which is a pretty mind-blowing idea.
Oh, it is. Some early proponents of this theory, like Wei Jiaxian, suggested that the Chinese discovered America much earlier than traditionally believed.
Really? Wow. And what was his evidence for this?
He pointed to descriptions of plants and animals that seemed to match up with species found in the Americas, like the Kiyu, which is described as a beast shaped like a rabbit with a bird's beak, owl eyes, and a snake's tail, sleeps when it sees people. This sounds a lot like an armadillo.
It really does.
Right. And then you have other theories about parts of the Shan Hai Jing describing places like the Arabian Peninsula or a vast area of Asia.
So people are looking all over the globe for these connections.
They really are. For example, Sequelin proposed that the Shan Hai Jing might actually be a geography book about the Arabian Peninsula or Mesopotamia, maybe brought to China by Persian scholars. And Ling Chinsheng saw it as a detailed gazetteer, basically a geographical dictionary of ancient Asia, covering everything from the East to West Pacific, the South China Sea, Southwest Asia, and even Siberia.
It's like people are trying to piece together a global jigsaw puzzle using the Shan Hai Jing as their guide.
That's a great way to think about it.
But the theory that really grabbed my attention was the one by the American scholar, Dr. Henriette Mertz. She had this incredible idea about the Shan Hai Jing and the Americas.
Oh yes, Dr. Mertz. Her research is fascinating. She compared the East Mountains Classic section of the Shan Hai Jing to real mountain ranges in the western United States, like the Rocky Mountains, the Sierra Nevada, the Cascade Range, and the Pacific Coast Ranges.
And what did she find?
She found a surprising number of similarities. The way the mountains run, the distances between them, even descriptions of the plants and animals, they all seem to align with features in those American regions. And based on that, she proposed that the Chinese might have explored America long before Columbus.
That's incredible.
I know, it's a bold theory, but the level of detail she found in her comparisons is pretty hard to ignore. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It definitely does. Are there any other potential global connections mentioned in the sources?
Oh, there are a few. For instance, in the Southwest, the Shan Hai Jing mentions Yorin Ruten, people like charcoal.
People like charcoal. That's interesting.
Right. Some people have speculated that this could refer to people in Africa, describing their darker skin pigmentation. Then there's the description of Signarenguo, which means a country of small people. This has been linked to historical accounts of the discovery of pygmies in Africa.
So potentially connections to Africa as well?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And there's more. There's this mythical creature called the Blemies, described as having eyes on their shoulders and a mouth on their chest. Sound familiar?
It does ring a bell.
It resembles the Chinese myth of Xing Tian, a headless giant who has his face on his chest. But it's not just a Chinese myth. Ancient Greek and Roman texts describe similar beings, potentially located in Africa as well.
So similar mythical creatures popping up in different parts of the world.
Exactly. It makes you wonder about the possibility of cultural exchange and shared beliefs across vast distances. And it doesn't stop there. Xu Jianzi even suggested that the Shan Hai Jing might reflect ancient Chinese knowledge of the Americas, Africa, the Arctic, and even regions near Antarctica.
That's an incredible claim. Is there anything in the text to support that?
Well, there are some intriguing possibilities. For example, the Yi Yi, ice barbarians, described in the sea within the North Classic, could be a reference to Eskimos. And the Su Shumagwo in the Great Wilderness West Classic might correspond to the equatorial desert people of Africa.
And then there's that description of the Riwei Shan, the mountains where the sun and moon rise, which is in the Great Wilderness East Classic.
Ah, yes, that one. Some scholars think this could be describing the Americas.
So, all in all, it seems like modern research has gone beyond simply being amazed by the Shan Hai Jing.
You're absolutely right. It's shifted towards actively investigating these potential connections with other parts of the world. It's no longer just about the strangeness of the book.
It's about trying to understand its place in a much larger global context. It's like we're using this ancient text to rewrite our understanding of history.
It's a thrilling possibility, isn't it? This seemingly bizarre book might actually be a key to unlocking lost chapters of global history.
It's mind-boggling. But let's not forget about its history within China. It's had quite a journey there as well, hasn't it? How was it received over time, and what's its legacy?
It's definitely had its ups and downs. Some rulers absolutely loved the book, but there were also times when it was censored.
Oh, really? Censored?
Oh, yeah. During the Qing Dynasty, for example, the famous scholar Ji Xiaolan labeled it a forbidden book.
A forbidden book? Why was that?
Officially, it was because of concerns about witchcraft.
Witchcraft, huh? Seems a little extreme.
I know, but some people believe it was more about the isolationist policies of the time. The Qing Dynasty wanted to limit outside influence, and they saw the Shan Hai Jing, with its descriptions of faraway lands and foreign people, as a potential threat. So they tried to suppress it.
But of course, you can't really keep a good book down.
You can't. The Shan Hai Jing was just too captivating, so people kept reading it in secret.
So it became a bit of a rebellious text in its own way.
You could say that. But beyond the intrigue, the Shan Hai Jing is also seen as a tremendously important historical document.
Absolutely. It's like a window into the past.
Exactly. Think of it as an ancient encyclopedia. It records early land surveys, documents mountains, rivers, local products, different ethnic groups, rituals, deities, myths, you name it.
It's a treasure trove of information about ancient China.
Exactly. Even though we have to take the more fantastical elements with a grain of salt, it's an invaluable resource for understanding that world.
And it's incredible to think that despite all the research that's been done on this book, there are still so many unanswered questions about it.
There are. The locations it describes, the interpretations of those descriptions. Many mysteries remain unsolved. Even historical figures couldn't agree on what to make of it. Sima Qian, for example, he was pretty skeptical about its accuracy as a historical source.
He wasn't convinced it was the real deal.
Not really. But then you have Lu Xun, the famous modern writer. He saw it more as a book of witchcraft, focusing on its more supernatural side.
So, two very different takes on the same book.
It just goes to show how multifaceted and open to interpretation the Shan Hai Jing is. It's this captivating mix of potential geographic observation, mythical storytelling, and maybe even glimpses of a wider world. And all of this is packed into a text that continues to puzzle and fascinate us centuries later. It makes you want to keep digging, keep exploring, keep trying to unlock its secrets.
It really does. So for our listeners, let's recap what we've learned about the Shan Hai Jing, this incredible ancient text that's part geography, part mythology, and maybe even a lost map of a much larger world. We've talked about how people's views on it have changed over time, from accepted fact to pure fiction and back again. We've explored the ongoing debate about who wrote it, most likely multiple people over many years, and we've seen how some of those seemingly mythical creatures might actually be based on real animals or misinterpretations of the natural world.
We've uncovered some surprising connections, haven't we?
We have, like the potential link between those multiple suns in ancient astronomy and those 28 mountains that might correspond to constellations.
And then there's that mind-blowing possibility that the Shan Hai Jing describes places far beyond ancient China, with intriguing links to the Americas, Africa, and other distant lands. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does. Our listeners have just gotten a whirlwind tour through centuries of scholarship on one of the most thought-provoking books in history. And hopefully you've had some of those aha moments along the way, like, Realizing that those fantastical creatures might have real-world counterparts, or seeing how mountains in the text might be linked to constellations in the sky.
I hope our listeners are feeling as captivated by this book as we are.
I'm sure they are. It's hard not to be.
Absolutely. And so, this brings us to a final thought to ponder. If parts of the Shan Hai Jing really do align with places far beyond ancient China, what does that tell us about the connections between ancient cultures? Could it be that we've underestimated the extent of interaction and knowledge sharing in the ancient world? What other stories, dismissed as myths or legends, might actually hold a kernel of truth just waiting to be uncovered? It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it? And it's one that I hope will stay with our listeners long after they've finished listening.
It's a reminder that history is full of surprises, and that sometimes the most unbelievable stories can lead us to the most profound discoveries.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, that was a fantastic deep dive.
It really was.
I'm already excited for our next exploration.
Me too. Until then, happy learning, everyone.